It started with a shattered glass of chocolate milk in a rundown diner on 42nd Street. Most people would see a clumsy child and an angry manager. But Sarah saw something else, a terrified little girl about to be crushed by a bully. She didn't know the silent man in the corner, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than the building, was the most dangerous man in New York. She didn't know that by stepping between that manager and the girl, she wasn't just saving a child. She was auditioning for a role that would change her life and threaten her heart forever. The neon sign above Sal's 24-hour diner buzzed with an annoying, intermittent hum that matched the headache throbbing behind Sarah Jenkins's eyes. It was 11:15 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday in Chicago. Steam rose off the wet asphalt outside, and the smell of stale coffee and grease clung to the air inside. Sarah wiped down counter number 4 for the 100th time that night. Her feet ached in her worn-out sneakers. She was 2 months behind on rent for her shoebox apartment in the chaotic district of Wicker Park, and her manager, Chadwick Gelson, was currently prowling the floor like a vulture looking for a carcass. "Faster, Jenkins," Chad sneered as he walked past, slicking back his thinning, greasy hair. "Table 6 is waiting on fries. You want to keep this job? Act like it." "Yes, Chad," Sarah muttered, keeping her head down. She needed this job. Her student loans from nursing school weren't going to pay themselves, and since her grandmother passed away last winter, she was entirely on her own. The bell above the door jingled. The heavy, heavy rain outside gusted in, followed by 2 figures. The first was a man who looked like he had walked off the cover of a Forbes magazine, though his eyes held the cold, predatory sharpness of a wolf. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, and a Patek Philippe watch glinted under the harsh diner lights. This was Dante Moretti. Even if Sarah didn't know the name, a name that made police captains stutter and rival gang leaders sweat, she felt the aura. The air in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees. Holding his hand was a small girl, maybe 6 years old. She wore a yellow raincoat and clutched a dirty, ragged stuffed rabbit. This was Mia. She had large, dark eyes that darted around the room with intense anxiety. They sat at a booth in the back corner. Dante sat with his back to the wall, eyes scanning the exits immediately. A habit born of survival, not paranoia. Sarah approached with her notepad. "Evening. Coffee?" Dante looked at her. His eyes were the color of steel, black, and a chocolate milk for the lady. He nodded at Mia. Mia didn't speak. She just stared at the table. "Coming right up," Sarah said softly, giving the girl a warm smile. Mia blinked, surprised by the kindness, but didn't smile back. 10 minutes later, the disaster happened. Chad was shouting at the cook in the back, his voice booming through the thin walls. The sudden noise made Mia jump. Her small hand flailed, hitting the tall glass of chocolate milk Sarah had just set down. Crash! The glass shattered against the cheap linoleum floor. Brown liquid splattered everywhere, onto the table, onto the seat, and crucially, onto the cuffs of Dante's pristine suit. The diner went silent. Mia froze. Her face went pale, her lips trembling. She looked terrified, not just like a kid who made a mistake, but like a kid who expected pain. Dante didn't move. He calmly picked up a napkin and dabbed at his wrist. But before he could speak to his daughter, a shadow loomed over the table. It was Chad. "Are you kidding me?" Chad roared, his face turning a blotchy red. He marched over, ignoring Dante entirely, and loomed over the 6-year-old girl. "Look what you did! That costs money! You stupid little brat!" Mia shrank back into the booth, tears welling up. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "I am talking to you." Chad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. Who's paying for this cleanup, huh? Dante's hand slowly moved toward the inside of his jacket. His eyes narrowed, a lethal darkness swirling within them. But before Dante could act, before the king of Chicago's underworld could end Chadwick Gelson's life in front of a dozen witnesses, a white uniform blurred into view. Sarah Jenkins slammed her tray down on the counter and stepped directly between Chad and the booth. "Back off, Chad," Sarah said, her voice shaking but loud. Chad blinked, stunned. "Excuse me?" "She's a child," Sarah snapped, spreading her arms to shield Mia. "It was an accident. I'll clean it up. I'll pay for the milk. Just walk away." "You'll pay for it?" Chad laughed, a cruel, wet sound. "You can't even pay for new shoes, Jenkins. Get out of my way. I'm going to teach this kid and her deadbeat dad a lesson about respect." Chad reached out, his hand grasping for Mia's arm to yank her out of the booth. Snap. Sarah didn't think. Instinct took over. She slapped Chad's hand away with a sharp crack that echoed through the diner. "Do not touch her," Sarah screamed. Chad recoiled, clutching his hand, his face contorted into pure rage. You waitress trash! You're fired! Get out! I'm calling the cops on you and these freaks!" Sarah stood her ground, breathing hard. She knew she had just lost her livelihood. She knew she was in trouble. But she turned around, ignoring Chad, and looked at Mia. "It's okay, sweetie," Sarah whispered, ignoring the trembling in her own hands. She grabbed a clean napkin and gently wiped a spot of milk off Mia's yellow raincoat. "Accidents happen. Nobody is going to hurt you." For the first time that night, Dante Moretti looked at Sarah. Really looked at her. He saw the frayed collar of her uniform, the exhaustion under her eyes, and the fierce, protective fire that burned within them. He saw a woman with nothing, defending his daughter against a man with a little bit of power. Dante slowly stood up. He towered over Chad, over Sarah, over everything. "Is there a problem here?" Dante asked. His voice was low, smooth, and terrifyingly calm. Chad spun around to face Dante, puffing out his chest. He was a small man, trying to be big. "Yeah, there's a problem, buddy. Your brat made a mess, and my employee just assaulted me. You're paying for the damages, and then you're getting out." Dante adjusted his cuffs, ignoring the chocolate stain. He pulled out a sleek black phone from his pocket. He didn't look at Chad. He looked at Sarah. "What is your name?" Dante asked her. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah Jenkins." "Sarah," Dante repeated, testing the weight of the name. "You just lost your job defending my daughter." "It was the right thing to do," Sarah said, lifting her chin. He was scaring her. "I see." Dante tapped the screen of his phone once. He put it to his ear. "Roberto, it's Dante. I'm at the diner on 42nd, the one on the corner block. Who owns the lease on this building?" Chad scoffed. "Who is he calling? His lawyer? Look, pal, unless you're calling the cops, I don't care." Dante held up a hand. "The Henderson Group? Good. Buy it." Silence. "Excuse me?" Chad sputtered. "Buy the building, Roberto. Offer double the market value if they sign within the next 3 minutes. I'll wait." Dante hung up the phone and placed it gently on the table. He looked at his watch. "You're crazy," Chad muttered, looking around at the other customers who were now watching with rapt attention. "You're a lunatic. I'm calling the police." Chad reached for the landline behind the counter. "Ring." The phone in the diner rang before Chad could touch it. It was the loud, shrill ring of the main business line. Chad froze. He looked at the phone, then at Dante. Dante merely raised an eyebrow. Chad picked up the receiver. "Sal's diner, yeah? Mr. Henderson? Why are you calling this late?" "What? Sold? To whom?" "But my contract." Chad's face went from red to a ghostly white. He dropped the receiver. It dangled by the cord, swinging back and forth. Dante stepped forward, closing the distance between him and the manager. Mr. Gelson, I assume. Chad nodded, unable to speak. My associates tell me I am the new owner of this establishment, Dante said, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Chad and Sarah could hear. Which means I am your boss, and I have a very strict policy about how my employees treat children. Dante leaned in closer. Get out. But my things, Chad stammered. Now, Dante growled. The wolf was surfacing. Chad scrambled. He didn't grab his coat. He didn't grab his keys. He ran out the front door into the pouring rain, slipping on the wet pavement before scrambling away into the night. The diner was dead silent. Sarah stared at Dante, her mouth slightly open. She had seen rich men before, but this was different. This was god-like power, wielded with surgical precision. Dante turned to Sarah. The intimidation vanished, replaced by a strange curiosity. Sarah Jenkins, Dante said, you are unemployed. I guess I am, Sarah managed to say, clutching her apron. Panic was starting to set in. That was her rent money. That was her food money. Dante reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. It was heavy, black cardstock with gold embossing. It simply said, Moretti Enterprises. There was a phone number and an address in the affluent Gold Coast district. My daughter Mia, Dante said, placing a hand on the girl's head. Mia leaned into his leg, clutching his trousers. She's been through a difficult time recently. She hasn't spoken in 6 months. Not a word. To anyone. Sarah looked at the little girl, her heart breaking. I'm so sorry. Tonight, Dante continued, when you stepped in front of her, she didn't flinch away from you. That is rare. Dante placed the card in Sarah's hand. His fingers brushed hers, warm, rough, electric. I am in need of a governess. Someone to look after Mia. Live-in position? The salary is 5 times what you made here, plus full benefits and tuition assistance for your nursing degree. Sarah's eyes widened. What? Sir, I'm not a nanny. I'm just a waitress. You are brave, Dante corrected her. And you are kind. Those are qualities I cannot buy, even if I buy the building. Come to this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't be late. Dante took Mia's hand. Come, Tesoro, let's go home. They walked out into the rain, where a sleek black Mercedes SUV rolled up to the curb instantly. A driver held an umbrella for them. Sarah stood in the middle of the empty diner, the black card heavy in her hand. She looked at the shattered glass on the floor. She had no idea that by accepting that card, she wasn't just taking a job. She was walking into a war zone between 2 mafia families, and she was about to become the most valuable leverage Dante Moretti had. The next morning, Sarah stood before a set of wrought-iron gates that looked like they belonged to Buckingham Palace, not a house in Chicago. The address on the card had led her to the Gold Coast, but this estate was something else entirely. High stone walls topped with security cameras lined the perimeter. She buzzed the intercom. Sarah Jenkins, I have an appointment. The gate clicked and swung open silently. Sarah walked up the long driveway, her stomach doing somersaults. She was wearing her best outfit, a simple navy blue dress and a blazer she'd bought from a thrift store, but she felt woefully underdressed. The front door was opened by an older man with a stern face and a perfectly pressed tuxedo. This was Arthur, the butler. Mr. Moretti is expecting you in the library, Arthur said, his tone dry. Follow me. The inside of the house was like a museum, marble floors, oil paintings that looked like originals, and crystal chandeliers. But it was cold. There were no family photos, no toys. It felt like a fortress, not a home. Arthur led her into a massive library lined with mahogany bookshelves. Dante was standing by the window, looking out at the garden. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing tattoos that curled around his forearms, symbols Sarah didn't recognize, but that looked dangerous. "You came," Dante said, turning around. He didn't smile, but his eyes weren't as cold as the night before. "I need the job," Sarah said honestly. "And I was worried about Mia." "Mia is in the garden," Dante said. "She is difficult. She refuses to eat, refuses to learn. Since her mother died, she has been a ghost." Sarah felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry for your loss." Dante's jaw tightened. "My wife didn't die of natural causes, Sarah. In my world, nothing is natural." He walked over to his desk and picked up a thick stack of papers. "This is a non-disclosure agreement. If you work for me, you see nothing, you hear nothing, and you say nothing. You protect Mia with your life. If you betray us..." He let the sentence hang in the air. The threat was clear. Sarah hesitated. She looked at the tattoos, the grandeur, the security. She knew deep down that this man was a criminal, a mob boss. But then she looked out the window. She saw Mia sitting alone on a stone bench, holding that ragged rabbit, looking small and infinite in her loneliness. Sarah picked up the pen. "I won't betray her," she signed. "Good," Dante said. "You start now. Your room is on the 3rd floor. Do not go into the east wing. That is my business area. And Sarah?" "Yes." "Do not fall in love with this life," Dante warned, his voice low. "It destroys everything it touches." Sarah nodded, her heart racing. "I'm just here for the girl, Mr. Moretti." Dante held her gaze for a second too long. "We shall see." For the first 2 weeks, things were quiet. Sarah made progress with Maya. She found out Mia liked painting, so they spent hours in the garden with watercolors. Sarah didn't force her to speak, she just talked to her. She told Mia about the diner, about nursing school, about the stars. One afternoon, while painting a blue flower, Mia tugged on Sarah's sleeve. She pointed to the paint and whispered a single word, her voice raspy from disuse. "Blue." Sarah froze. She smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "Yes, sweetie, that's blue." It was a breakthrough. Sarah rushed to the study to tell Dante. She forgot the rule about knocking. She burst into the library. "Dante, she spoke. She said..." Sarah stopped dead. Dante wasn't alone. 3 men were in the room. One of them, a man with a scar running down his cheek, was holding a gun to the head of a kneeling man who was bleeding onto the Persian rug. Dante looked up, his face a mask of fury. "I told you," Dante hissed, "never to enter without knocking." Sarah gasped, backing away, her hands over her mouth. The reality of who she was working for crashed down on her. "Get out," Dante roared. Sarah slammed the door and ran. She ran up the stairs to her room, locking the door behind her, shaking uncontrollably. She packed her bag. She had to leave. This was too much. But as she reached for the doorknob to flee, she heard a sound from the hallway. A scream. Mia's scream. Sarah didn't think about the gun she had just seen in the library. She didn't think about the man bleeding on the rug. The only thing that existed in her universe was that scream. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror, and it was coming from Mia's bedroom down the hall. Sarah dropped her bag. She kicked off her heels and sprinted down the corridor, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She burst through the double doors of Mia's room. The room was in chaos. The lamp was smashed. And there, by the window, a man dressed in black tactical gear was trying to wrestle a kicking, screaming Mia into a duffel bag. The window was shattered. He had rappelled down from the roof. "Let her go!" Sarah screamed. The man spun around, eyes wide beneath a ski mask. He hadn't expected anyone. He was huge, easily twice Sarah's size. He pulled a knife from his belt, a jagged, serrated blade that glinted in the moonlight. "Back off, bitch," the man growled, "or you die first." Mia was sobbing, her little hands gripping the man's arm, trying to bite him. Sarah looked around. She had no weapon. She had no training. She was a nurse, a healer, not a fighter. But looking at Mia's terrified eyes, something ancient and feral woke up inside Sarah. She grabbed the heavy, cast-iron statuette of a ballerina from the dresser. "I said," Sarah's voice dropped, cold and steady, "let her go." The man lunged. Sarah didn't retreat. She swung the iron statue with every ounce of strength she possessed. The man was fast, but he was arrogant. He raised his arm to block, expecting a weak blow. He was wrong. The iron smashed into his forearm with a sickening crunch of bone. He howled, dropping the knife. But he didn't stop. He backhanded Sarah across the face. The force of the blow sent her flying across the room. She crashed into the wall, her vision swimming with black spots. She tasted copper. Blood! "Sarah!" Mia screamed, her second word in 6 months. The man picked up the knife with his good hand, his eyes murderous. He forgot about the kidnapping. He wanted revenge. He stalked towards Sarah, who was trying to push herself up, her head spinning. "You made a mistake," the man hissed, raising the blade. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the end. Bang! The sound was deafening, louder than thunder. Warm liquid splattered across Sarah's face. She gasped, opening her eyes. The man in black stood frozen for a second, a look of confusion on his face. Then he crumpled to the floor, dead before he hit the carpet. Standing in the doorway was Dante Moretti. His chest was heaving. He held a smoking pistol in his hand. Behind him stood Enzo, his second in command, looking pale. Dante didn't look at the dead man. He dropped the gun and rushed to the corner where Sarah was slumped. "Sarah!" he choked out, falling to his knees beside her. He touched her cheek, his fingers trembling. "Did he touch you?" I'm okay," Sarah whispered, though the room was tilting. "Mia." Dante scooped Mia up with one arm, pulling her into his chest, while keeping his other hand on Sarah's shoulder. Mia buried her face in her father's neck, sobbing uncontrollably. "Enzo!" Dante barked, the sound terrifying. "Clear this trash out of my house, and find out how they got past the perimeter. If you don't find a breach, I will assume the breach is you." Enzo nodded sharply and began dragging the body away. Dante turned back to Sarah. He saw the bruise forming on her cheek, the cut on her lip. His eyes, usually so cold and controlled, were burning with a mixture of rage and something else. Guilt. "I can walk," Sarah said, trying to stand. Her knees buckled. Dante didn't let her fall. He swept her up into his arms, bridal style, as if she weighed nothing. "You are not walking," he said firmly. "You are bleeding." He carried her not to her room, but to the master suite, a place no one was allowed to enter. He kicked the door shut and laid her gently on the massive bed. He set Mia down beside her. "Stay with Sarah, tesoro," Dante said softly to his daughter. "I need to get the medical kit." Mia nodded, grabbing Sarah's hand and holding it tight with both of hers. When Dante returned, he didn't call a doctor. He opened a kit that looked like it belonged in a trauma ward. He poured antiseptic onto a cloth. "This will sting," he warned, his voice unusually gentle. He dabbed the cut on her lip. Sarah hissed in pain. Dante paused, his eyes locking with hers. He was so close she could smell him. Gunpowder, expensive cologne, and rain. "Why didn't you run?" Dante asked quietly, continuing to clean the wound. "You saw what happened in the library. You were packing your bags. You could have escaped while he was distracted." "I heard her scream," Sarah said simply. "I couldn't leave her." Dante stopped moving. He stared at her, searching her face for any sign of deception. He found none. "Most people run from me, Sarah," Dante murmured. "Everyone runs, or they want something. Money, power, protection." "I don't want your money," Sarah said, wincing as he applied a butterfly bandage. "And I don't like your power. It scares me." "Then why are you here?" "Because she needs me." Sarah looked at Mia, who had fallen asleep clutching Sarah's arm. "And maybe because I think you're not just the monster you pretend to be." Dante looked away, his jaw clenching. He finished bandaging her. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark grounds of his estate. "My wife," Dante began, his back to her. "She didn't just die. She was executed. By a man named Luca Vitti. He is the underboss of the rival family. He wants my territory. He wants the ports. But mostly, he wants to destroy my lineage." He turned around. "That man tonight was one of Vitti's mercenaries. They know I have a weakness now. They know I have a heart." He looked at Mia. "I thought I could protect her by shutting the world out. But I failed." Dante walked back to the bed and sat on the edge. He looked at Sarah with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You saved her life tonight. You saved my life. Because if she had been taken, I would have burned this city to the ground, and myself with it." Dante reached out and took Sarah's hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, rough against her soft skin. "I cannot let you leave now, Sarah," Dante whispered. "It is not safe for you out there. Vitti knows your face now. He knows you are the one standing between him and my daughter." "So I'm a prisoner?" Sarah asked, her heart racing, not from fear, but from the electricity of his touch. "No," Dante said. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "You are under my protection, and under my protection you are untouchable, but you must trust me. Can you do that?" Sarah looked into the eyes of the devil and saw a fallen angel. She knew she should say no. She knew she should demand a police escort and a plane ticket to anywhere else. "I trust you," she whispered. Dante's gaze dropped to her lips. For a terrifying, exhilarating moment, she thought he was going to kiss her. The air between them crackled with magnetic tension, but he pulled back. He stood up, the mask of the Don sliding back into place. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow, everything changes." 3 weeks passed. The estate transformed from a workplace into a sanctuary, and then, slowly, into a home. Sarah's wounds healed, leaving only a faint, pale scar on her lip that Dante would often stare at when he thought she wasn't looking. The dynamic in the house shifted. The staff treated Sarah with a newfound reverence. She wasn't just the help anymore. She was the woman who took a knife for the air. Mia was blossoming. She smiled now. She spoke in sentences. She even laughed, a sound that seemed to physically pain Dante with joy whenever he heard it. But the shadow of Luca Vitti loomed over them. Security was tripled. Dante was gone for long hours, returning late at night smelling of cigar smoke and exhaustion. One Tuesday evening, Dante found Sarah in the kitchen, helping the cook make pasta. "Leave us," Dante commanded the staff. The kitchen cleared instantly. Dante looked tired. He loosened his tie. "I need a favor." Sarah wiped flour off her hands. "A favor? You're the boss. You usually give orders." "This is not an order," Dante said, leaning against the counter. "Every year, the 5 families of Chicago hold a charity gala. It is a neutral ground, a place where we pretend we are civilized businessmen and not, well, what we are." "Okay," Sarah said. "I need to attend, to show strength. If I don't show up, Vitti will think I am weak, that I am scared after the attack." Dante paused. "I need a date." Sarah laughed nervously. Surely you have a list of models or heiresses who would kill to go with you. I do, Dante said flatly. But I don't trust them. I need someone who can watch my back. Someone who notices things. Someone loyal. He stepped closer. I need you. Dante, I'm a waitress from Wicker Park. I don't know how to act at a mafia gala. I don't have a dress. I don't know which fork to use. I don't care about the forks, Dante said intensely. I just need you by my side. Will you come? Sarah looked at him. She saw the vulnerability he hid from everyone else. Okay, I'll go. The night of the gala arrived. Sarah stood before the full-length mirror in her room, unable to recognize the woman staring back. Dante had sent a team. Stylists, hair, makeup. The dress was a masterpiece of emerald green silk that hugged her curves and pooled on the floor like liquid money. It had a slit up the thigh that was dangerous and a neckline that was elegant, but daring. She walked down the grand staircase. Dante was waiting at the bottom. He wore a tuxedo that was midnight blue, tailored to perfection. He was on his phone, barking orders, but when he heard her footsteps, he looked up. He stopped talking. He slowly lowered the phone, ending the call without saying goodbye. He watched her descend, his eyes dark and hungry. He didn't say she looked beautiful. He didn't say she looked nice. Dangerous, Dante murmured as she reached the bottom step. You look dangerous, Sarah. He offered her his arm. Stay close to me. Tonight, we are in a tank full of sharks. The gala was held at the historic Palmer House Hotel. The ballroom was dripping with gold and crystal. A live orchestra played waltzes, while men who had ordered murders sipped champagne with politicians and judges. As Dante and Sarah entered, the room went quiet. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a wave. Who is she? Is that the waitress? The one who saved the girl? Dante held her hand tight, guiding her through the crowd. He introduced her to powerful men, and Sarah played her part perfectly. She was charming, polite, and observant. But the peace didn't last. Halfway through the night, a man approached them. He was shorter than Dante, with a face that was too handsome, too smooth. He had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Dante, the man said, spreading his arms. So good to see you out of your fortress. Dante stiffened. His grip on Sarah's hand tightened to the point of pain. Luca, Dante nodded coldly. This was Luca Vitti, the man who ordered the hit, the man who killed Dante's wife. And who is this? Luca turned his reptilian gaze to Sarah. He looked her up and down, licking his lips in a way that made Sarah's skin crawl. The famous nanny, the one with the iron hand. Look at her again, Dante said, his voice dropping to a subsonic growl. And you will lose your eyes, Luca. Luca laughed, holding up his hands. Easy, amico, just making conversation. Suddenly, a woman appeared at Luca's side. She was stunning, with raven black hair and a dress that cost more than Sarah's life earnings. She looked at Dante with familiarity, and at Sarah with pure venom. Hello, Dante, the woman purred. Sophia, Dante acknowledged stiffly. Sophia turned to Sarah. So, this is the help. You're bringing the staff to the gala now, Dante. How charitable of you. Sarah felt her face heat up. She wanted to shrink away. Dante stepped forward, shielding Sarah. She is not the help, Sophia. She is my guest, and she has more class in her little finger than you have in your entire bloodline. Sophia's face twisted in rage. Luca chuckled, enjoying the show. Enjoy the night, Dante, Luca said, his eyes gleaming. It might be your last. Luca and Sophia walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I need a drink, Dante muttered. Stay here. Do not move. I see the Don of the Russo family. I need to speak to him. Dante walked toward the bar, leaving Sarah alone near a large marble pillar. She felt exposed. She decided to find a restroom to catch her breath. She navigated the crowd, finding a quiet corridor away from the ballroom. As she passed a heavy velvet curtain shielding a balcony, she heard voices. Low, urgent voices. "It's set for midnight," a man whispered, "when the fireworks start." "Are you sure the perimeter is clear?" "Yes, Dante trusts me. I disabled the sensors on the west exit. The team comes in through the kitchen." Sarah froze. She knew that voice. It wasn't Luca. It was Enzo. Dante's right-hand man, the man who had dragged the body out of the nursery. "Good," a second voice replied. "Luca Vitti. Tonight, the Moretti Empire ends. Make sure the girl is taken alive. But Dante, put a bullet in his head." Sarah's blood turned to ice. It was a coup. Happening tonight. Right now. She had to warn Dante. She turned to run back to the ballroom, but her heel caught on the carpet. She stumbled, her hand hitting a vase on a side table. It wobbled and clinked against the wall, a tiny sound. But enough. The voices on the balcony stopped. "Someone's there!" Enzo hissed. Sarah kicked off her heels and ran. She sprinted down the hallway, adrenaline flooding her veins. She could hear heavy footsteps pounding behind her. "Get her!" Luca shouted. Sarah burst back into the ballroom. The music was loud. People were laughing. No one knew that death was coming. She scanned the room frantically. Where was Dante? She saw him. He was on the far side of the room, talking to an older man. He was laughing. He had no idea his best friend was about to kill him. Sarah pushed through the crowd. "Dante!" she screamed, but the music drowned her out. She was 10 feet away when a hand clamped over her mouth. A hard, steel arm wrapped around her waist, lifting her off her feet. "Not a word, sweetheart," Enzo whispered in her ear, dragging her backward into the shadows of a service alcove. "You're going to be our insurance policy." Sarah kicked and clawed, but Enzo was too strong. He pressed a cold gun barrel against her ribs. "Dante!" She tried to scream against the hand, but it was muffled. Through the gap in the crowd, she saw Dante turn around. He was looking for her. He frowned, scanning the spot where he had left her. He looked worried. Then, the clock struck midnight. Boom! The first firework exploded outside the glass windows. Enzo smiled. Showtime. The fireworks exploded in a dazzling array of red and gold outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting strobe light shadows across the ballroom. Boom! 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 To the guests, it was a celebration. To Enzo, it was cover. He dragged Sarah deeper into the service corridor, away from the noise, away from salvation. His grip was bruising. The gun dug into her ribs, a cold circle of death through the silk of her dress. "Why, Enzo?" Sarah gasped, stumbling as he shoved her toward the loading dock exit. "He trusts you. He calls you brother." "Brother!" Enzo spat the word out like poison. "I clean his messes. I take his bullets. And for what? He gets the millions, the mansion, the power. I get the scraps. Luca offered me the city. All I have to do is open the door." They reached a heavy metal door leading to the alley. Enzo reached for the handle with his free hand, momentarily loosening his grip on her waist. Sarah knew this was it. If she went through that door, she would disappear into a trunk, and Dante would be dead within minutes. She thought of Mia, sleeping in her bed, waiting for a father who would never come home. She felt a surge of adrenaline, so potent, time seemed to slow down. Her hand flew to her hair. She wasn't wearing just any jewelry. Dante had insisted on a vintage diamond hairpin, sharp and sturdy. As Enzo turned the handle, Sarah ripped the pin from her hair. With a guttural scream of desperation, she drove the sharp point down into Enzo's hand, the one holding the gun. Enzo howled in shock and pain. The metal pin pierced his hand, striking a nerve. His fingers spasmed involuntarily, and the gun clattered to the concrete floor. Sarah didn't wait. She didn't try to grab the gun. She kicked it away, sending it skittering under a parked delivery truck, and she ran. "You little witch!" Enzo roared, clutching his bleeding hand. He lunged for her, grabbing the back of her dress. The silk tore. Sarah stumbled forward, but she kept her balance. She sprinted back down the corridor, back toward the ballroom, back towards the music. Behind her, she heard Enzo scrambling, presumably to retrieve his weapon. She had seconds. She burst through the velvet curtains back into the ballroom, just as the fireworks reached their crescendo. The orchestra was swelling. People were clapping. And there, in the center of the room, stood Dante. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was standing perfectly still, like a statue in a storm, his eyes scanning the crowd with terrifying intensity. He had sensed she was gone. Sarah didn't care about decorum. She didn't care about the 500 eyes on her. "Dante!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the applause. "It's a trap." Dante's head snapped toward her. He saw her torn dress. He saw the terror in her eyes. And then he saw Enzo emerging from the curtains behind her, raising a gun. Dante didn't hesitate. He didn't dive for cover. He moved toward her. Bang! The first shot shattered the champagne tower. Glass exploded outward like shrapnel. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Screams replaced the music. Guests trampled each other, trying to get to the exits. Dante reached Sarah, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind a thick marble pillar, just as bullets chipped away the stone where her head had been a second ago. He pulled a gun from a holster beneath his tuxedo jacket, a gun Sarah hadn't even known was there. "Are you hit?" Dante demanded, checking her over, his eyes wild. "No," Sarah panted. "It's Enzo. He's with Luca. They're hitting the house, Dante. They're going after Mia right now." Dante went still. The color drained from his face, leaving a mask of pure, concentrated rage. "Mia?" "The kitchen team," Sarah choked out. "Enzo disabled the alarms. They're waiting for the fireworks to end." Dante looked at his watch. "We have 20 minutes to get across the city." He turned back to the chaotic room. Enzo was pinning them down, firing blindly at the pillar. Across the room, Luca Vitti's men were drawing weapons, engaging Dante's few loyal guards. It was a massacre. "Stay behind me," Dante ordered. He stepped out from behind the pillar. He didn't fire wildly. He took 2 shots. Bang! Bang! 2 of Luca's men dropped. Dante moved with the fluidity of a predator. He grabbed Sarah's hand and led her through the war zone. Tables were overturned. Waiters were hiding. Enzo saw them moving toward the exit. "Don't let him leave!" Enzo screamed to his traitors. A man blocked their path near the kitchen doors, a hulking brute with a knife. Dante didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He holstered his gun, grabbed a magnum of champagne from a table, and swung it. The bottle connected with the man's head with a sickening thud. The man went down. They burst into the kitchen. It was empty. The staff had fled. They ran out the back exit into the alley. The rain had started again, washing away the blood on Dante's hands. "The car!" Dante yelled, pointing to his armored Rolls-Royce. But the tires were slashed. Of course, Enzo had been thorough. "They want us stranded," Dante growled. "Dante," Sarah pointed. "Look." A delivery motorcycle, a beat-up pizza bike, was leaning against the wall. The keys were in the ignition. Dante looked at the bike, then at his tuxedo, then at Sarah in her ruined ball gown. "Get on," he commanded. Sarah hitched up her dress and climbed onto the back. Dante straddled the bike, kicking the engine to life. It whined, a pathetic sound compared to his usual engines, but it ran. "Hold on tight," Dante said. "If you fall, I cannot stop." Sarah wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face into his back. Dante gunned the throttle. The bike shot out of the alley onto the wet streets of Chicago. They wove through traffic, ignoring red lights, driving on sidewalks. Dante drove like a madman, banking the bike so low Sarah thought her knees would scrape the asphalt. "Faster!" Sarah cried into the wind. "Please, Dante, faster!" "I am trying!" Dante shouted back. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling hands. It was a notification from the smart home system she had installed on her phone to monitor Mia's sleep. Alert. Motion detected in nursery. "Dante!" Sarah screamed, showing him the screen. "They're in her room!" Dante didn't speak. He just twisted the throttle all the way back. The engine screamed. They were doing 90 miles an hour on Lakeshore Drive. They were 5 minutes away. But 5 minutes was a lifetime when a monster was standing over your child's bed. The iron gates of the Moretti estate were wide open. The guard booth was dark. Dante didn't slow down. He rode the motorcycle straight up the driveway, skidding to a halt right at the front steps. He jumped off the bike before the engine even died, pulling Sarah with him. The front door was ajar. Silence hung over the house. A heavy, oppressive silence that was worse than the gunfire at the gala. Dante held his gun with both hands. He signaled Sarah to stay behind him. "Stay close," he whispered. "If you see anyone who isn't me or Mia, you run." They stepped into the foyer. The body of Arthur, the butler, lay at the foot of the stairs. Sarah stifled a sob, her hand flying to her mouth. He had been so kind to her. Dante's face twitched, a muscle in his jaw jumping, but he didn't stop. He moved up the stairs, silent as a ghost. They reached the second-floor landing. The door to Mia's room was at the end of the hall. It was open. Dante moved toward it, checking the corners. Suddenly, a voice boomed from the room. "Come in, Dante. We've been waiting." It was Luca Vitti. Dante stepped into the doorway, gun raised. Sarah peeked around his shoulder. The scene froze the blood in Sarah's veins. Luca was sitting in the rocking chair, the chair Sarah used to read stories to Mia. On his lap sat Mia. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face, but she was silent. Luca had a pistol pressed against her temple. Standing in the corner, nursing his bleeding hand wrapped in a napkin, was Enzo. "Put the gun down, Dante," Luca said, smiling pleasantly. "Or I paint the walls with her?" Dante slowly, agonizingly lowered his weapon. He placed it on the floor and kicked it away. "Let her go, Luca," Dante said, his voice devoid of emotion. "This is between us. She is a child." "She is your legacy," Luca corrected. "Killing you ends the man. Killing her ends the name." Luca looked at Sarah. "Ah, and the nurse made it. Good." Enzo was very upset he lost his prize. Enzo stepped forward, picking up Dante's gun. He pointed it at Dante's chest. "You always thought you were smarter than me, Dante. You thought you were the king." "I thought you were my brother," Dante said softly, looking Enzo in the eye. "I loved you, Enzo." Enzo's hand wavered. For a split second, regret flickered in his eyes. "Don't listen to him," Luca barked. "Shoot him, Enzo! Do it now!" "Dante," Mia whispered. It was the first time she had called him by his name. Not Papa, Dante. Dante's eyes shifted to his daughter. "Close your eyes, Tesoro," Dante said gently. "Cover your ears." Mia squeezed her eyes shut and clamped her hands over her ears. "Now!" Luca screamed. Dante didn't move toward Luca. He moved toward Enzo. It was a gamble, a suicide mission. Enzo had the gun aimed at his heart, but Enzo hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. The weight of 20 years of friendship held his finger back. That fraction was all Dante needed. He grabbed the barrel of the gun, twisting it away from his chest just as it went off. The bullet shattered the window. Dante head-butted Enzo, the sound of breaking cartilage echoing in the room. Enzo crumpled. "No!" Luca shouted. He rose from the chair, lifting the gun from Mia's head to aim at Dante. "Sarah!" Dante roared. Sarah didn't need to be told. She had been scanning the room. On the floor, near the toy chest, was the heavy bag of marbles they had played with yesterday. Sarah grabbed the bag and hurled it with all her might at Luca. It wasn't a lethal weapon, it wasn't a bullet, but it was unexpected. The bag hit Luca square in the face. He flinched, his aim going wide. His shot hit the ceiling. Dante was across the room in a blur. He didn't punch Luca. He tackled him, driving him into the wall with the force of a freight train. The gun flew out of Luca's hand. Dante's hands found Luca's throat. Sarah rushed to Mia. She scooped the girl up, shielding her body with her own, turning them away from the violence in the corner. "It's okay, I've got you, I've got you," Sarah chanted, rocking the girl. Behind them, the sounds of the struggle ceased. There was a sickening crack, and then silence. Sarah didn't look back. She just held Mia. "Sarah." Dante's voice was ragged. She turned around. Luca Vitti was on the floor. He wasn't moving. Dante stood over him, his chest heaving, his shirt torn, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. He looked wild, terrifying, and utterly exhausted. He looked at Enzo, who was groaning on the floor, unconscious but alive. "It is done," Dante whispered. He walked over to Sarah and Mia. He fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around both of them. He buried his face in Sarah's shoulder and Mia's hair. The great Mafia Boss, the King of Chicago, was shaking. "You saved us," Dante murmured into Sarah's neck. "You saved us." The winter snow had melted, revealing the first green shoots of spring in the garden. The estate had changed. The high walls were still there, but the atmosphere was lighter. The dark velvet curtains had been replaced with sheer linen that let the light in. Sarah sat on the stone bench in the garden, watching Mia chase a new puppy, a golden retriever named Lucky, across the grass. Mia was laughing, a sound that rang clear as a bell. "She looks happy," a deep voice said behind her. Sarah smiled, leaning back as Dante approached. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He wore jeans and a black sweater. He looked younger, lighter. "She is happy," Sarah said. "She starts school next week." "And you?" Dante sat beside her, taking her hand. "Are you happy?" "I am," Sarah said. After that night, Dante had disbanded much of his operation. He had kept the legitimate businesses, the shipping, the real estate, and sold off the rest. He had made a deal with the remaining families. Leave me alone, and I leave you alone. With Luca dead and Enzo in prison, no one dared challenge him. He had chosen peace. For Mia, and for Sarah. "I have a question," Dante said, playing with the plain silver ring he had given her a week ago. Not an engagement ring, but a promise ring. "What is it?" "The contract you signed," Dante said, a playful glint in his eye. "The one about being a governess. It expires next month." "Does it?" Sarah teased. "I guess I'll have to find a new job. Maybe back at the diner." Dante's face darkened playfully. "Over my dead body." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "I had my lawyers draw up a new contract," Dante said. Sarah took it. It wasn't a contract. It was a marriage license, already signed by him. "Role, wife, partner and queen," Dante recited. "Duties, loving me, even when I am difficult. Benefits, everything I have, everything I am, forever." Sarah looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "You're impossible." "I am," Dante agreed, "but I am yours." He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't the desperate, adrenaline-fueled kiss of a man facing death. It was the slow, deep kiss of a man who finally had a reason to live. Sarah kissed him back, knowing that her life in the diner, the spilled milk, the fear, it had all led to this. She had walked into the lion's den to save a lamb, and she had ended up taming the lion. "I'll sign," Sarah whispered against his lips. Dante smiled, resting his forehead against hers. "Good. Because the puppy was part of the deal, and I can't return him." Mia ran over, breathless and giggling, and jumped onto the bench between them. Dante wrapped one arm around his daughter and one around his future wife. For the first time in his life, the fortress wasn't the stone walls around the house. The fortress was right here, on this bench, and it was impenetrable. And that is the incredible story of how Sarah Jenkins went from a waitress at a diner to the queen of the underworld. It's a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for someone who is smaller than you. Sarah didn't have money or weapons or power. She had courage. And that courage won her a family and a love that defied all the odds. It shows us that even in the darkest corners of the world, there is light if you are willing to fight for it. If your heart was racing during that final showdown in the nursery, hit that like button right now. I want to know, what would you have done if you were in Sarah's shoes at the diner? Would you have stood up to the manager or kept your head down? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want more dramatic, romantic, and twist-filled tales like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We have a brand new story coming next week about a billionaire who pretends to be homeless to find true love. You do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.